The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hello there. Obi-Wan Kenobi here, also known as James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan,
Jedi Master Plo Koon,
and many other characters in the world of Star Wars. You're listening to... Shh, don't tell. It's The Secrets of Star Wars. May the Force be with you.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 118.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Just a reminder to please share the podcast on your favorite social media and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing. And it also helps us get seen by more people who would love to listen to us talk about Star Wars. And today we are very excited to have a special episode of the podcast. But before we get to the main event, joining me tonight on the panel is the Bendu herself, Angela Cialana.
Oh, Mike, am I going to steal this from you? Hello there.
Well, I think it might be appropriate if you all do that. And second up is old Ben, Mike Creevy.
Well, what I was going to say was so uncivilized, but that doesn't actually fit here. But, hello, it's good to be here.
If you couldn't tell by the introductions of those, there's a Kenobi theme happening with this particular episode. But before we talk anything about the Jedi Master himself, we are thrilled and honored to welcome a very special guest on the show tonight. You would know him best as the author of a few Star Wars books and comics, and particularly he wrote the Legends Kenobi novel. We welcome to the show this evening John Jackson Miller. Hello, John, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello there, in keeping with the theme.
So how are things going for you?
It's been incredibly busy. I think I just finished, over the last 5 weeks, I had Mid-South Con in Memphis, then was finishing up the new novel, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The High Country,
cool.
Which is the debut novel for Strange New Worlds. Then had to run down to Chicago, Star Trek Chicago, to announce it. Then I did Fan Expo Indianapolis the following weekend. And then this past weekend, or rather yesterday as we're recording this, was Free Comic Book Day. And that was incredibly busy because, we had May the 4th and then the Strange New Worlds release and the Picard finale all in the same week. And it was just very, very busy for me. So
that's awesome. It's a good thing that us Star Wars fans are not jealous for the amount of Star Trek work that you do.
Right.
But it's funny because
there is no conflict.
I'm a huge Star Trek fan as well.
No, I have a line there. Vader says there is no conflict, and of course, Spock would say infinite diversity and infinite combination. So,
yes.
and really, there's so many ways. One of the things I announced just a couple of days ago was I've done Professor Amy Sturgis and another professor named Emily Strand, who do books about pop culture things for academia. They asked me to do an essay just on Star Wars and canon, and then they started working on a book on Star Trek and canon and Star Trek and multimedia approaches to storytelling. And they started by asking me for one essay, then it became two. And so in addition to the other things I've done, I wrote an essay for these two essays for these books that are coming out in 2023 where I get into the origins of Star Wars and Star Trek storytelling outside of TV or outside of the movies. And it was amazing to me the number of places where Star Trek and Star Wars actually feed off of each other and react to one another and build upon, things that, proof of concept that have been done in the other franchise. And then the names that just go back and forth that you see, multiple times. I used to joke that you had to have the initials JJ to do both Star Wars and Star Trek, but no, I mean, it's been, this is a very old thing. So.
Oh, well, that's really cool. We're going to stick mostly to Star Wars, though, for our discussion this evening. So the first question that we have for you is, what was your first experience of Star Wars?
That would have been wondering what the heck it was, because all the other kids were starting to talk about it, and I hadn't gone yet. There was a little girl that lived down the street from me who had lost most of her teeth. Because we're talking about 8 or 9 years old at this point, and she kept talking about all the characters, and I couldn't understand who she was referring to because it was she was talking about Darth Vader, and I said, "Do you really mean Dark Invader? What are you talking about? What is this name?" And then of course I ended up getting the comics before I could see the movie. The comics had been released. Starting in March of 1977. Of course, the novel had come out, December of 76. And the whole idea was to build up, support and interest in it. And so, we weren't even really able to get into the theater yet. And it was back in the days before the multiplexes. So, films would have, runs in towns where it would be exclusive to one theater or another for a while. Where I ended up seeing it was the Whitehaven Twin Theater, which was in Memphis, Tennessee. This was about 2 blocks from Graceland. And so this is the theater where Elvis would watch movies at night. And he would close down the theater after midnight, and he and his friends would watch movies. And that was probably the last movie that Elvis saw was in that theater. So I did not actually see it with Elvis. I did not get in until like the second or third attempt of going. But my sister, Kathy, to whom Kenobi is dedicated, for making sure her kid brother got in to see the movie. She made sure that it finally happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow. That is awesome. It's a great origin story with Star Wars.
Yep.
So now we'd like to know a little bit more about your origin story with writing. So how did you get into writing, and did you always want to be an author growing up or working in comics and novels?
I was lucky that I grew up in a house where, books were readily available. And, I also had my older sister who was into all these pop cultural things. So she was able to, clue me into things that were happening out there, James Bond, Monty Python, George Carlin, everything that, other kids didn't discover until, their teenage years, probably. I was hearing immediately. Or hearing about immediately. She worked in the local record store where they had the Star Wars soundtrack had the posters inside them, the John Berkey poster with all the attack on the Death Star. Made sure I had a couple of those. I had my mother was a grade school librarian, and so other people's mothers threw their comics away. My mom encouraged me to put my comics in order, and they've stayed in order ever since. And the New Dawn novel is dedicated to my mother for that reason. But I started drawing my own comics at age 6, which is about the same time I was starting to read them. And I was also hammering out stories, typewritten stories on the old Smith Corona typewriter we had. And I had my own franchises of characters. People always ask, did you do a lot of fan fiction? I didn't know what fan fiction was. I was always using my own characters, in part because I was a poor artist, and if I wanted to draw, Han Solo or Iron Man, nobody would have recognized them. So, I was doing my own characters, and also I was enough of a capitalist that I knew that I wanted to be able to publish these things and sell them. Later on, I discover through Comics Buyer's Guide magazine, a newspaper for fans, that there are fanzines out there. And that people are mailing fanzines and also, the small press comics back and forth to one another. And I was doing that in high school. Also edited the campus newspaper in high school and then at college. And so I kind of had that background of, I was always, doing some writing, always, using usually my own characters. And of course, that's sort of the big irony is the last 20 years, just about, and it'll be 20 years next year that, since my first, I would say, professional comics work for Marvel. I've worked almost exclusively, not entirely, but almost exclusively in other people's sandboxes. But the benefit there is, at least in terms of comics, I've got talented artists who know what Iron Man looks like. And so there you go.
Well, and John, I want to follow up on the comics issue in particular here, because I've been curious about this myself, what the process for that is like as opposed to with novels, how different, writing comics is than that. And if you have a preferred medium, between them.
I started writing comics first because I mentioned that Comics Buyer's Guide, magazine. That was my second job out of grad school. My first job was editing a line of trade magazines for the lumber industry. And I don't know what you've heard about the lumber business, but whatever you've heard, it's not as glamorous and interesting as all of that. And so when I found out that, the Comics Buyer's Guide was looking for somebody to come up and work with Don and Maggie Thompson, who were very much legends in the comics fandom. They were, more or less the George and Martha Washington of comics fandom. Did the first fanzine. Attended all the first conventions. That was something that was, I left for Wisconsin in a heartbeat as soon as I got that job. And I got the chance to pitch for Marvel about a decade into that job. The thing about doing comics is, it's like a movie in some ways and not like a movie in other ways. But it is like a movie in the sense that, you're kind of giving the, giving the artist directions. You're kind of, in a sense, you are a bit of a cinematographer because you're telling which shots you want to see and, who you want to see in them and what order they speak in. And, you can kind of give some guidance as to, how to frame things. But generally, you don't go over the top of the artist a lot in terms of, being too specific. I've done comic sequences where there have been very specific action sequences where, this needed to happen and then this and then this. That's often very difficult to pull off. It's better if, particularly in combat sequences, for the artists to have room to do what they want to do. On the other hand, the place where I kind of get really involved in terms of I guess overprescribing what I want to see happen, it has to do with the jokes. When a joke is just two characters talking at a wall, like Charlie Brown and Linus at the wall in Peanuts, you don't need a lot of creative camera work. To go, because I did have those moments happen in the comics after I really just expected two characters talking heads, and I got bird's eye view shot and then close up and then and it's all very creative, but the point of the scene is the joke, right. So and the expression. So let's go like that. Generally that is not a problem. It does happen to a degree just because one of the things that happens with comics is that most modern comics are done in a way where you and the artist never meet. You and the artist often don't have conversations. Me and most of my artists don't speak the same language. because a lot of people are overseas. And so, I generally have one shot at the beginning of explaining what I mean. And so, I've done mostly, not entirely, I've done many more novel projects, just by pure word count, than comics in the last decade. Not because of out of preference necessarily, but I'll say that it is nice to be able to frame every shot mentally for people on my own.
Sure.
It's now and if people don't understand what a situation looks like, that's on me. That's my fault entirely.
Wow. Well, going into the Star Wars comics and novels as well, in particular, how did you end up getting actually working on Star Wars, and what is that experience like? Just starting off, but then, just as it continues.
Well, as I mentioned, I got Marvel in part because I knew the folks that worked there, and they knew me at that point. And having done Iron Man, I was actually in Oregon for a family reunion, and realized that Dark Horse Comics was nearby. And again, I knew them through the business and arranged a tour. And I was just fortunate enough to see the editor, Randy Stradley of the Star Wars office, just before I was done with the tour. And it's like, give me a minute here. And I just happened to have my Iron Man comics along. And he said, yeah, we actually have an opening on a series, the Star Wars Empire series. I submitted several proposals. One of them was accepted, a Darth Vader story that took place in between episodes 2 and 3. Not 2 and 3, episodes 2 and 3 if you grew up when I did, but episodes 5 and 6. But yeah, and that went over well enough that I was asked to develop the Knights of the Old Republic series, and the Knights of the Old Republic lasted for 5 years, 6 years over the course of the various publications that we did. Ironically, again, I discovered today is the 10th anniversary of the release of the final Knights of the Old Republic comics issue. So it's been quite a while. But it was 1,344 pages, which are now all in this one gigantic tome that we've got here, the omnibus for it. But yeah, I mean, once I got Star Wars comics, then it was it's just a matter of talking to the folks with regard to Star Wars games, and then prose short stories, first for the website, then for Del Rey via the Lost Tribe of the Sith short stories, and then the novel started with the Knight Errant novel, where I also did a graphic novel at the same time, or a comic series at the same time, and it kind of went from there. And yeah, and just ever since then, every other thing I've worked on, whether it's been Simpsons or Star Trek or Conan, or the video games like Mass Effect or Halo, that's just been a matter of getting people to look at the stamps that are on your passport. They see that Marvel's stamped, they see the Star Wars stamp. They kind of say, well, you may be able to handle their characters without ruining the brand.
That's so cool. I have been just an avid fan of the novels ever since I was in grade school. And so I'm curious about your experience, because you've done a few novels, but you've done novels pre-Disney purchase of Lucasfilm and then post-Disney purchase. And so I want to know, what was your experience, or how are those experiences different? And then I guess going forward, how is it like working with the story group in creating the new canon?
The Kenobi novel was actually we had just announced the Kenobi novel. I had not started the manuscript yet, but we had just announced the novel 3 weeks before the Disney buyout. And I do know that we were being encouraged at that point to focus more on the original classic characters, and whether that has something to do with the buyout or not. Probably not. Somebody must have known, but
Right.
I'm guessing these things were kept close to the vest. But back in that phase, everything still went through the Lucasfilm, fiction office. Everything still went past, Leland Chee, who's the keeper of the holocron.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is the next novel that I did was the novel that tied in with the Rebels TV series, and immediately that was a different workflow because there was an active project involved that had not been released yet. And so, I had a situation where I was already in the beginning, running outlines past the three executive producers, Greg Wiseman, Dave Filoni, and Simon Kinberg, and getting their notes back on them. What happened is, as well as during that phase, I was given access to a lot of the materials for the TV show, which was not expected to come out until after the novel came out. And then I did my first real, actual, I suppose, literal brush with the story group was a conference call with Dave Filoni and the other staffers at Lucasfilm about the Kanan character that is in New Dawn and everything like that, and that just didn't seem to me to be a whole lot different from how it normally would be doing something about a project or a series that was not available yet, or was not where I was predicting and not reacting to things. And so I was 2/3 of the way through that book when I got the call to go to Lucasfilm along with Timothy Zahn to do a video about the new thing they were calling the Legends, and also to introduce the Lucasfilm story group. And so the book that I had written, it did not have an official title. It had two possible titles. My working title had been Loose Cannons, but it turns out that Loose Cannons and Canon probably wouldn't have been the right joke to do. Although that is still in the book. That is still in the book in the sense that there is a the MacGuffin, the secret element that they're looking for, or the secret compound they're trying to get. The purpose of it is to lubricate turbo laser cannons. So there's already a loose cannon thing going on there. The other possible title I had for it was Rogue Elements, and it probably would have been Rogue Elements had they not said, well, let's come up with something that has a feeling of a beginning. And of course, as you've observed, I ended up using Rogue Elements as the title of the Star Trek Picard novel for Captain Rios that I just did. And that's something where, it's something like a quadruple or quintuple entendre relating to all of the other things that happened in that book. So it turned out to be just as useful someplace else. But yeah, that's what happened then is and also during that meeting, I said, okay, look, if you're going to have a character that you want to carry on through some of the later stories and put into some of the other, parts of the franchise, I recommended the Ray Sloan character, the captain of the Imperial ship, because she survives the book. That's helpful, and then also, she is just an example of a kind of officer that I thought probably would exist in the Empire. And I'm delighted that character has appeared since then in comics, other novels, and a video game, because she's in Star Wars Squadrons as well.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I have just a super quick follow-up to that, because you were the first novel in the new canon. Yeah. Did you feel any pressure because of that as you're kind of starting this kind of new process to new viewers and new readers?
I just had somebody ask about this on Twitter 5 minutes ago before the broadcast. What was George Lucas's view of canon, et cetera, and I just poured it into the Wikipedia entry because there's a big section on. I mean, technically there's not a new canon because previously it was what George wanted to do. And, we adhered to what he had done on screen. And we tried to generate things that, hopefully could be used on screen at some point. But, the tail was not going to wag the dog here. I mean, this is we understood where we were in the scheme of things. And, the difference simply is that, with everything, narrative done post New Dawn, or starting with New Dawn and going afterward, what it simply meant is that, everybody involved was aware of these things. And also there were occasions where concepts could be salted into our books that they might draw upon later. So, it's not well remembered now probably, but New Dawn ended up releasing a month before Rebels came out. Probably not entirely to the benefit of the book in terms of just sales, just because people didn't know who the characters were when they saw them in the store. But it was something where we had worked together, so much beforehand that Vanessa Marshall told me that she had read the book. She's the voice of Hera. She had read the book and was trying to incorporate that into some of her later performances. And she did do a reading of one of the Hera chapters for Entertainment Weekly, and that's linked on the New Dawn page on my website, which is farawaypress.com.
Well, and that's and we were blessed to be able to have Vanessa on the show a while back, and
very good.
Just so cool to talk to her. So that's great to hear. And that was one, New Dawn. I really enjoyed that quite a bit. So thank you for that. I just want to throw that in. But we're all here. Actually, you guys can hold yours up too. Those the listeners can't see us. We're all holding our Kenobi copies here.
Yeah, they're all autographed, by the way.
That's the one everybody's going to go buy now.
That's right. I love that image. Oh my gosh. But we, of course, we have, at the time of this recording, we're a few weeks out from the release of this new Kenobi series. And so we're all thrilled for this. I know at least Angela and I are both in the same boat here, that Obi-Wan's our favorite character in Star Wars. And so with your background writing this novel in particular, I have so many questions about it, but I want to start just asking you, really, how did you approach this in the first place? Like, just getting in this character, getting in this time, preparing for this story itself. What was that experience like?
Well, it started 7 years before the book came out, because it was originally going to be a graphic novel. I had quit my day job at the comics magazines, at the publishing company, because I had so much stuff going on in comics. And one of the things that I was asked to do is come up with a concept for a graphic novel for what would have been Star Wars' 20th anniversary, and also Dark Horse. They were having Star Wars' 30th anniversary, and then Dark Horse is having its 20th anniversary. And what I had said is we started discussing Westerns that we liked, and we kicked around the idea of this is me and Jeremy Barlow, who was my editor in the comics offices, and we're kicking around an idea of maybe something with Boba Fett. Maybe he's the mysterious stranger who wanders into town, something like that. That led to a discussion of the movie Shane, which was the famous Western that both a novel and then a movie starring Alan Ladd, whose son Alan Ladd Jr. was a producer of Star Wars. So there's some kismet right there. There's some karma going on there. And so what happened is I wrote really just like a 5-paragraph brainstorm that I sent in an email, and the email was titled "The Ben Kenobi Western." And in it there are the broad strokes of the entire novel, and it changed somewhat, but it did not change entirely. Instead of, I think the major difference was that, in addition to the names of the characters changing, that originally the character that would become Annalene was not Oren's, coworker, or not coworker, but neighbor, but she was Oren's daughter, and she discovered the horrible things her father had done. And I realized by the second draft, no, it's more interesting if she and Obi-Wan or maybe the second draft or the third draft. There was a draft in there where I decided it was more interesting if she were more his peer in age. And the moments that I wanted to get with, there being, a younger female character in there that I was able to accomplish with her daughter.
Right.
And so, and that allowed me also to, really deal with Annaline's character as somebody who was a single mom and who was dealing with, Obi-Wan Kenobi has lost everything, and he's been uprooted. He's been sent off to the middle of nowhere, and he knows what his mission is, but that's it. Whereas Annaline, due to the death of her husband, she has not had time ever to contemplate what a new life for herself might look like, because she's still trapped under the wreckage of the life that she had. She is, in fact, by the time we get to the Kenobi novel, she is the glue holding the entire village together. And it is just crushing for her. And so she and he are coming at life from these different directions. So I had these interesting things going on, and I also, the Tusken Raiders are in there as of, I think, the second draft. I think or the first draft in a way. And then we get the even Jabba the Hutt's accountant. He's in there by the second or third draft, and I was delighted to get him in, such that by the time I got to the third draft, this thing was 50 pages long, the outline, and there was no way in the world it was ever going to fit into a graphic novel. And then a couple of things happened in the spring of 77, the spring of 07. First of all, there started to be a buzz that George Lucas might be willing to come back and do a TV show that, the rumor was it would be on ABC. This is even before Disney owned Star Wars. But there was a rumor that there might be a Disney show that would be set in this period. And suddenly we're like, well, maybe we shouldn't touch Obi-Wan in this stretch. And then the other thing that happened is my editor, Jeremy Barlow, he got the Indiana Jones franchise. And I had already put my marker down saying, if there's a Indiana Jones 4, I want to write that book and any book that comes after it. And that's what ended up happening, is I ended up writing the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull adaptation. We ended up parking or shelving the whole comics idea. It did not come up again until I did mention it to my editor, Shelley Shapiro, right after I finished the Knight Errant novel, the first Knight Errant novel. Just wasn't time for it yet. When it did come about, and this is interesting as well, because it goes back to what I mentioned earlier in the podcast about the last issue of Knights of the Old Republic came out on I guess May 8th, 2012. At that point, I had been looking at various ways to continue that series, either with a comic series or with something in prose, and I had already by that point realized that it wasn't going to happen in comics. I had a prose proposal to do something with those characters. And that was really the thing that I brought down to Star Wars Celebration in Orlando in 2012 as my lead possible thing to do. And again, as I mentioned, they weren't really looking at doing stuff with as much stuff with the characters in the past anymore. Or not the past, but the non-major characters, the spin-off characters. And they said, Shelley said, oh, that first idea is interesting. Do you have anything with any of the older characters, the existing characters, the major characters? And I said, well, I got Kenobi. That's which at the time was just Ben, because we called it Ben. It became known as Kenobi because there was still a Ben Skywalker in canon. Not in canon, rather in the EU. In the EU.
Right.
And so we, for confusion purposes, we made it Kenobi, which it turned out to be a good idea. And we're kind of off from there. And I went back and I dusted off the outline and realized that, boy, it first of all, I boiled it down from the 50 pages to like 10. and I wrote a sample chapter because the conceit of the book is that 95% of it is told through the eyes of the other characters, not through Obi-Wan's eyes, and that percentage increased in Obi-Wan's favor when Jennifer Heddle, who's the fiction editor at Lucasfilm, she recommended, hey, let's do a couple more of the meditations. They're places where Obi-Wan can talk to the reader about what's going on in his life. Everything else you're getting it filtered through his interactions with the others. But otherwise, that was majorly, the story was already there. I wrote it over the winter of 2012, beginning of 2013. And then the novel came out in August of 2013. And we did the book release party that we did was actually at a bookstore in Memphis. Went back to my hometown for it, which is just a couple of blocks away from the theater that did have the exclusive opening run of the movie back in 1977. So it's all connected over time.
Speaking of Obi-Wan, a little bit more in particular, you definitely had to kind of get into his mind and understand what he was doing there on Tatooine. Do you have any personality traits that you share with Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I don't know. I have a beard, I guess. I don't know. I really try to submerge myself into whoever I'm writing. Sometimes, that's got deleterious effects. I mean, when I wrote the Lost Tribe of the Sith series, particularly when I was inside the mind of Sela, who's one of the particularly pernicious members of the Sith, I felt like I needed a shower after writing because it was just some of the terrible things she did. And then the novel that I wrote here most recently. Before the Picard novel, I read a novel for Star Trek Discovery called Die Standing, which is about the Emperor from the Mirror Universe. That's Emperor Georgiou, the Michelle Yeoh character, and basically, her world is a moral snake pit, and her initial response is always sarcasm, always insulting, always suspicion, always everything. And she's a very similar character to Obi-Wan in a sense because she's also been uprooted. Same for Rios in Picard, cut off from everything, uprooted. Same for Kanan Jarrus in New Dawn. Same for Zane Carrick in Knights of the Old Republic. Same for Kara Holt in the Knight Errant novels. I have a lot of these people who are completely cut off from the support systems or the rules of the world that they used to live in, and the reward systems that they used to have to respond to, and they're cut loose. I used to say that my specialty is writing Jedi alone, Jedi who are cut off from the Order, who are having to decide what they feel about the Order itself and its strictures and its outlooks on things, without that body being around. And I used to say I just did Jedi alone, but I've now done enough of these stories for other things that I also could say I could do that for Mirror Universe Emperors alone, and other people who are again cast out, not stowaways, but castaways. Castaways are kind of what I do, and yeah, I mean, you can't really do religious issues, for example, directly in Star Wars, the same way you could do it in Star Trek. Star Trek Well, I mean, if you've read my Rios novel, the Picard Rios novel, I actually have the character who reads philosophy, going through the debates between Jacques Derrida and Kierkegaard in their readings of the story of Abraham and Isaac. Whereas if you're going to do that for Star Wars, it's got to be philosophy that's done through a different filter, done through universal or in that universe characters. And but I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can get at these things, and my general approach to Star Wars kind of. People ask if I have thoughts about the Jedi, thoughts about the Republic, thoughts about various things. I think if you were to read everything I've done for Star Wars, there's kind of two themes. One is that the relationship between the Jedi Order and the Republic is a really bad deal. The Jedi Order is often relied upon by the Republic as a basically a police force that works for free. And I always have felt that is not what the Jedi ought to be. What the Jedi ought to be is they ought to be Jedi. They ought to. I've always said the best scene in the original. Not the original, but in the prequel trilogy. My favorite scene in the prequel trilogy is Obi-Wan Kenobi telling the guy not to sell him death sticks, telling him to go home and think about his life. Because that feels to me like a Jedi doing what a Jedi is supposed to do, which is ministering to the people and not going out and fighting wars against what are usually other Jedi, usually problems they've created. And then I would say that probably the other running theme is that I think that the Jedi are generally better trusting their own instincts as opposed to the body itself. Again, one hesitates to use because these things are not exactly. Parallel. I mean, the Jedi Order is not a church. It is not a religious institution in the same way. In large measure, it's a debating society. But you don't necessarily want a debating society making certain decisions or personal decisions, and so you do have this thing going on. And I think that actually really, Terry Brooks kind of landed on it in he uses in the prequel trilogy, the first novel for the first adaptation for Phantom Menace describes there being this tension between the unifying force and the living force. The unifying force is you and your position in all of history and all of everything, and the living force is the people around you, the people who surround you, and that we have the living force more or less being represented in the prequel movie by Qui-Gon saying, "You must become more attuned to the living force, my Padawan," because. Obi-Wan has been taught by Yoda and has been taught by all these other seers that are part of the big picture. And look, Knights of the Old Republic, the Zane Carrick story is nothing if not an individual getting steamrollered by people who are looking at the big picture. He's a Jedi who basically falls through the cracks of this great prophecy that they've had looking for the Sith. Whereas Zane Carrick is more or less the living force personified in terms of he only cares about his friends. He only cares about the living people that he's run into. He's never really thinking about the big picture. He's never really thinking about the future. He's never really thinking about any of that. But I sort of try to address these things like that because I do think that is and again, I think Brooks was going off of some things, just elements that were just lines that were mentioned in Star Wars here and there. But I think it really works because you do get the sense in the original trilogy that the Emperor tells Luke that his faith in his friends is his weakness. And no, it is Luke's faith in his friends that saves him.
Right.
If Luke had not left Dagobah when he did to go save his friends, and he failed to do so, he wouldn't have lost his hand. If he hadn't lost his hand, he wouldn't have looked at his hand when he had a chance to slay Darth Vader. And it seems to me that whether it's intentional or not, I choose to interpret it that is Qui-Gon's revenge. That is how he. That is more or less. That's Luke sort of bringing these things, I guess, if you want to say, into balance. I don't know, but look, in a sense, what we're all doing is we're all whatever the franchise is, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or the video games or other things, we're all trying to take the threads that are there and elaborate on a little here and a little there, and make things, what the books that we do should sort of rhyme with what's going on in the movies. And so, I'm sure there are people that have, written books that are much more off in the other direction from my stories, which are a lot about loners and a lot about people building their own communities outside the Jedi Order. But it was obvious to me that the preeminent Jedi alone is Luke Skywalker. So he everything he did, he had to do without without a structure. And again, one of the reasons I think I don't discuss the sequels much, but one of the things I liked or didn't mind about the sequels is Luke Skywalker probably would have been very skeptical about the Jedi Order, particularly the more he read about it. The more he read about it, the more he learned about it. He would be pretty skeptical about when Jedi form clubs. It's not usually a good thing, and that's in my own work. That's in the form of the Covenant. That's in the form of Revan's group in the video game. So. Yeah, this stuff is out there, and everybody who's writing can choose to focus on what they want to focus on.
Well, John, all of these conversations around all these topics, like this is what our podcast is. We're like so pleased. I know we're all so pleased to hear about this, because I mean, to us, Star Wars, that was one of the main inspirations behind Lucas's work in the first place, was to convey these themes of morality and ethics and right and wrong, and that kind of thing is something that fascinates us with philosophy, spirituality, religion, etc. So coming kind of back full circle to Kenobi, then as you said, you had to kind of get in his head, right? So how do you understand Obi-Wan's connection to the Force? And I guess in particular with that novel, what kind of lessons do you think Obi-Wan is teaching us, or that he can teach us through what we see there in his particular time in that novel?
Well, I mean, we very much were trying not to show the Force as a magic well. We've been told many times, don't create new powers, don't create new anything, and that the Force really should not be any kind of a literal compass or a literal divining rod saying go this way, not that. That had to come from their own personal ethics, their own teachings, and they could get the feeling that something was wrong, but the dark side. Again, I don't want to get into the the metaphysics that Lucas perceived or that others perceived or whatever. But I tend to kind of feel that there's not this well of positive energy and this well of negative energy, and you tap into one or the other. I think it's more, the dark side is really the deeds that you do and what surrounds you and what corrupts you. It struck me that he would be trying to find his way and trying to make decisions without being able to consult anybody else. Mm-hmm. Qui-Gon never responds, and people kind of, I get people say, why doesn't Qui-Gon respond? Well, Qui-Gon doesn't respond. In the original draft, he did, and that was only because I had not read Dark Lord yet. And Dark Lord is a book by James Luceno, which establishes that Obi-Wan, or establishes in the EU that Obi-Wan first learns of Darth Vader's identity as Anakin and Darth Vader's existence at the same time that he first successfully communicates with Qui-Gon. So that meant that in my story, he was never going to be able to actually, get him to answer the phone. But that worked out just fine, I thought, because this is Obi-Wan going through their meditations for a reason. He's going through a thought process of, is this moral? Is that moral? Is this moral? Is that moral? One of the things, and I talk about this in Knights of the Old Republic a lot, is this whole thing that Lucas kind of dropped on the prequel trilogy of, the Jedi don't date. Now we understand why. The explanation is you don't want to end up prizing anybody or any one individual so highly that you will do terrible things. I mean, there's all sorts of stories about that. I just got home from Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness an hour ago. Okay, yes. That's a theme. That you shouldn't. It can be corrupting to care too much. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the whole notion that the children of Jedi are strong in the Force. I use that to sort of have Obi-Wan literally ask, well, that's kind of strange. If does the Force really know what it wants? If we're supposed to avoid families and yet the families are strong in the Force, and he also has the line that he says, if it is just inherently wrong to care a lot about somebody as decent as Padme, what is this thing we're in? This is I look at this as the beginning of Obi-Wan, more or less having to be his own Jedi Order, his own church, his own everything. And so I wasn't in a rush for him to start talking to Qui-Gon or talking to other people. I would say, people ask what I think should have happened later, or how I will feel about various things that I can't talk about anyway. Later stories, or shouldn't talk about anyway, because I don't want to get into anybody else's interpretation. Yeah, anybody can tell their own story. My feeling was always, when I wrote the story, Obi-Wan knows this is a life sentence on this planet. He knows the next time he leaves, he's going to be, leaving for good, because he's the hope that failed. Luke is the new hope, and his job is here. And also, he's under feelings of guilt. He's here to atone. He whether he could have stopped this or not, he feels like he could have stopped this horrible thing that happened, and so that's where he's going to be. And of course, that's my view in 2007, and in 2012, 13 when I'm writing the book, again, that doesn't preclude other people writing other kinds of stories. I used to, Timothy Zahn and I have joked at conventions before that, his preference is that Obi-Wan basically leaves Tatooine constantly, involved in basically doing secret ops to cause distractions, keeping people away from Tatooine. And I always respond, well, that's kind of like Andy Dufresne sneaking out of Shawshank prison on the weekend to go to Boston. Finally getting to leave 19 years later. And it's 19 years in both Shawshank Redemption and Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
It probably doesn't mean as much if you're always getting to go out. But again, look, there's a million different Obi-Wan Kenobi stories. They don't all have to adhere to anything. And to a degree, Kenobi being canon or not, or Kenobi the novel being canon or not, Kenobi the novel being Legends. Well, that allows it to sit there and be there no matter what.
Well, and I think, John, you've kind of addressed this a little bit in some ways, but just to kind of ask you outright, as far as just Star Wars big picture here, what about Star Wars in particular really resonates with you, and how has that changed you personally?
Well, I mean, it's obviously it's changed and reshaped my career, and having this access to this large readership and the fans and their devotion to it. I mean, that right off the top, there's that. It's helped to have a franchise to write about here that has this deep well of different places that you can go and different kinds of stories that you can tell, and where you can go deep on an issue like this and the Kenobi thing, or go in a completely different direction, like the New Dawn novel. It's as much about the rise of the Soviet Union as it is anything else. Using my my poor unloved Soviet studies master's degree that I didn't actually think it would be useful again. And of course,
awesome.
2022, I actually have been calling on what I remember a lot more. Unfortunately, just in reading the news. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a franchise that has room to tell a lot of different kinds of stories, and where you can have that kind of depth and have characters that are having those kind of crises that they're going through. Star Trek, which I've kind of been doing in parallel with it for a number of years here. The simple added benefit to it is that I don't have to hide that I'm writing about Earth or human philosophers or things like that. And also transporters. I love the transporters. The transporters are storytelling magic. You just get right to where right to where the action is.
Cool. Well, we all have sort of, I know when you're doing these interviews and things, you kind of don't want to tread on having favorites. But I kind of want to ask you if you have a favorite Star Wars movie.
So probably Empire, because that was, they said the golden age is 12, and I was 12 when that movie came out. That was the movie that I was prepared for. That was the movie that I did have all the stuff for. I had all the toys. I had everything else. I had my own shared universe that a friend of mine had come up with, notebooks full of the spaceships that we had drawn, and the planets and the culture and everything. So yeah, that was my peak fandom, certainly. So completely, unrelated to anything that happened in the movie itself. That's and again, it just so happens it was the best movie. So that's in my opinion. But that's there, and it's great that it keeps coming back around, and that's wonderful.
Absolutely. And then just going forward, then with the other the new series, right? I know, Mike, we were all looking forward to what's coming up next, and we're always talking about that. So What are you most looking forward to just in general as an observer or as an author, whatever you'd like to, however you'd like to answer that in the Star Wars universe?
In the Star Wars universe, well, again, it's great to have all these shows coming out. The Obi-Wan movie or TV show or whatever it's going to be has that bell has been rung again and again and again in social media for the last 10 years, pretty much almost immediately after the sale happened, such that my mentions on social media have exploded several times a year when there's going to be a Kenobi movie, or no, it's not happening, or a TV show, no, it's a movie again, and what I've said every time is more Obi-Wan is always good, and and there's that. More Obi-Wan is always good, and there's that, and and just in my position, one of the things I've kind of had to do in general, I've gotten to where I don't do reaction videos to, any of the shows, either Star Wars or Star Trek or anything else, just because, again, as I said, they need to be able to do their own thing. I do my thing, they do their thing. But also, well, in the very obvious case, I knew everything that was happening in Rebels. First season, because I was working on New Dawn. I did the first novel for Captain Pike, as played by Anson Mount, called The Enterprise War. And of course I have the first novel for Strange New Worlds is coming out later on here. And basically, kind of, I'm very close in some cases to what's going on, and some cases I'm more distant, and it does me no good for anybody to know which is which. So, but I think I'm glad that there's more content coming. I'm glad that people are having fun. And all these things, they're about escapism. They're about giving people something to invest their time and energy in, and really, honest to gosh, not fight about. I know that certainly the internet has supercharged a lot of the things that were always there, because again, working with Don and Maggie Thompson, doing their fanzines back in the 60s and 70s, and then our own newspaper in Comics Buyer's Guide, that when I was working for it in the 90s, people would find things to argue about, very, very, very vocally. But the nice thing was that it took 2 weeks for a letter to get into print, and it wasn't instantaneous. But I think what everybody needs to understand is, look, we're all having fun here, and it's our ad manager for Comics Buyer's Guide had a saying. He said, "Comics, you'd think they'd be fun." And really, that's I think that's how everybody ought to kind of feel about this stuff, because people are really I know they're passionate about it. I know they feel it strongly. When something comes up again that they're really obsessed about, and they get very concerned. This is not necessarily just going to be my podcast for any of my religious themed metaphors, but I have a buddy who says that you can't judge a comic book movie or a science fiction movie that's based on a novel or anything like that, because they're not actual movies. They're a chance for the fans to go to church and hear the words spoken to them by another person, by another interlocutor, and that's kind of true, because I realized that we were watching the Watchmen movie independently. We were having that discussion, and it's like we realized, at no point are we discussing whether this movie is good or not. We're actually just discussing what liberties it took, and whether they were correct or not, and. Some things, look, the word canon, come on. So at any rate, but look, I think people should, kind of go back to what Shatner did in the SNL is a sketch where he's kind of like, I did this thing for fun years ago. You don't take it and turn it into something that isn't. So.
One of our other panelists, Andrew, always likes to just say whenever we discuss any controversies, he just always says, just give us more Star Wars. Just give us more Star Wars. He's like, I'm just happy we're getting more Star Wars.
There you go.
So perhaps an unfair question here. Outside of Star Wars, what is perhaps your favorite project that you've worked on, or one that you've really enjoyed? You've mentioned Marvel, you've mentioned Star Trek, you've mentioned all sorts of different franchises. It's like trying to pick your favorite child, which is unfair. But
I will say that the just completed the hardcover that's out, the Picard novel that you've got, is my favorite project of all time that I've worked on. My favorite novel because it is just. It's a screwball adventure with low stakes. And it's almost entirely from the point of view of the Rios character, who, has when they're asking me to do the audiobook instructions for the narrator, Robert Petkoff, who just does wonderful work. I said, basically this character has two modes, boredom and disgust, and that's I got to bring in all this stuff about collecting and philosophy and various other things into this book. Because what had happened is I had done the Emperor Georgiou book, I had done the Enterprise War book, where in both of them there had been pretty heavy body counts in these books, and I had said, look, with the pandemic on and everything, I want to do something that's fun. I want to do something that is got to be a good summer read, and it'll be a good summer read this year too, because in June the trade paperback version of that book comes out. So I'm delighted I got to do that. Other favorites, the Simpsons comics that I did. That's the kind of stuff where again, I didn't have to make any. I didn't have to hide the fact that I wanted to write comedy. That's what it was. And probably the underseen thing that I did for Star Wars that was just wonderful. We did for the Canto Bight book, which was Casino World for Episode 8. These were all stories that took place in one night on the casino planet, and I got to write a story about this one veteran card player who is completely undermined by these three short green guys who are just a force of chaos, and as he tries to make 1 million credits in one night, and again that story. And again, to listen to the audiobook, Jonathan Davis does these cartoon voices for these characters, just wonderful. It's just a hoot. And so, everything doesn't have to be huge stakes. Sometimes you'll discover the stakes as you get further in. That Picard novel actually has some fairly significant stakes, but you don't know it until you're a good ways in, and the characters don't know it, and that's fun. I like doing that. I like fishing the reader in like that.
That's a lot of fun, and a lot of work too, I imagine, but enjoyable. We have a lot of, I guess a wide age range that listens to this podcast. We have some young folks that listen to this podcast as well as older. And I would like to ask you, kind of on behalf of them, I know a lot of them are probably wondering this, how do I become an author? So maybe young, but maybe not so young.
Write for places where people can read what you've done. Write to be read. Write where you'll get feedback. Write where you'll know whether you're understood or not. If there isn't a high school newspaper, there's usually a blog somewhere. If there's not a college newspaper, there's usually there's some place where you can write about the local high school football game. Doesn't matter whether you care about what you are particularly, you care particularly about what you're writing about. In fact, my year doing lumber was training for writing other things that I knew more about. Fan fiction people do it. I've never, been critical of doing it. I will say because it does get you read. It gets other people reading your work. It is not going to help anybody necessarily get a job writing tie-in fiction, and your fan fiction will never be published, just as a matter of law. The publishers are not allowed to look at that material because you might send in your novel with Han Solo and Lando or whoever, and they might not even look at it. But if a movie with Han Solo and Lando comes out later on with more or less the same idea, you might be talking to a lawyer at that point. And this is why the tie-in publishers just can't look at anything unsolicited. And it's also why I, as an author, I just don't read anything that comes in like that. I'm sorry about it, but the way that you get hired to do this kind of stuff is to have done something else already. It's by invitation only in general, and so what you need to do is basically build your own portfolio, get stamps in your passport. And this is the good thing about it is it's easier to self-publish today than it has ever been. When I was starting out, Kindle was not a thing, and self-publishing was, in prose was considered vanity press. And with the intended derogatory adjective there, that meant this is something nobody else would want to publish. And so it's not like that anymore, or at least it's not exclusively the opinion of everybody. But it is the case that you kind of need to be able to have a variety of things that you've written for a variety of people, and something where you can show, I have written for other people who have had to approve what I did. I have had to hit a deadline, that sort of thing. And that's kind of what it takes from there. And again, I would say save everything. I have cases and cases here of folders of stuff that I did when I was a kid and on through high school, college, everything since. I've been using Macintoshes since 1990. I have the same file structure since 1990. I can actually go in and find some of my idea files, where I wrote a concept for a short story here or there back then, and every so often I get something out of them. It's save everything.
Well, John, what do you think the hardest part of being an author is, or maybe along the same lines, like what people might be surprised to know about your line of work?
Well, you have to, for a novel, you have to go away for a long time. And one of the things that I've had to learn to do is to do a novel. I've had to block out the time and say nothing else. Nothing else. I had a during Strange New Worlds, during the original work on it, I had a comic book job that needed to be done, and I said I need to bring in an assistant on this who can actually wrangle the world, so I don't have to sit researching stuff. I just want to write the words, again, because I don't want to have overlapping things if I can help it. Some people are very good at that. If I'm doing something where I'm in one character's head for a lot of the time, even 2, 3, 4 days away, that it can be hard to get rolling again. So there's that kind of isolation you have to be okay with. And then you have to be okay with being an extrovert pretty much all of the rest of the time. because you are expected to promote. You are expected to go to the conventions, and it happens that I like doing that, and I like having getting feedback. Well, not getting feedback in the sense that I read my own reviews. I don't do that. But I like being able to actually go to conventions and have panels and do podcasts and things like that, where I get to talk about the work. So these ideas that have been sort of stumbling around in my head, by me discussing the work, it actually clarifies what I even intended to do. So.
Sure.
Cool. John, we've got one more question to head your way. This question actually comes from one of our listeners, because we asked our listeners to submit questions. So I know you've already kind of touched on this, but I want to read this because I want to honor what our listeners are doing. And listeners, in the future, when we do these interviews, definitely pay attention on our social media and Discord and whatnot, so you can submit questions when we do these in the future. So this question comes from Jeff on Discord, and he says, I am currently rereading Kenobi in preparation for the TV series. I know it is not canon under Disney. However, I noticed a reference to Satine in the first part of the book. The publication was about a year after Disney acquired Star Wars, and I was curious if in the writing of this book it was ever planned to be canonical, or what direction the publisher, Lucasfilm or Disney, provided in how it would integrate into the new canon, if at all. Was there ever a plan for it to be under the new canon? I still consider it headcanon. Thank you for the great stories of this and A New Dawn. Rebels and Kanan are some of my favorite Star Wars. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Well, thanks, Jeff. Well, first, to recap what we had said, Kenobi was actually published and in print before I even started working on New Dawn, and we didn't know anything about the plans for the story group and what they were doing afterward. I mean, obviously, the reason that they did what they did was pretty simple. You're not going to do a $1 billion movie and have an opening crawl that's 400 feet long. Because it includes everything that happened on all the novels to that point, and also some of the pretty big events in Star Wars history had happened in that stretch. And again, you need to give the filmmaker something to work with. Specifically with regard to Satine, because that's come up a bunch of times now. How that got into the work. That name was actually suggested by my editor. In one of the proofreading rounds, where it was just suggested maybe we should suggest something about where he got the name from. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, here's what I've got. She suggested Satine, and I didn't know at that time. I think somebody had said maybe that had come from a script that had not been filmed or something like that. I can't remember where that came from. It didn't come from me. But the Satine mention had been mentioned, and I said, well, I can do that, but then I also have this other issue, which is that Ryder Wyndham already explained where Ben got the name in a book called Life and Legend of Obi-Wan Kenobi that he did for Scholastic, where he said that Ben saw the name Ben's Mesa on a map. When he was at the real estate office, and that Ben's Mesa actually goes pretty far back, because that had come from, I think, one of the role-playing games or something like that at some point. Whether it was a map, and again, whether it was influenced by the fact that Ben Kenobi lived there and they called it Ben's Mesa, or vice versa, I don't know. But my philosophy is I always try to make all accounts correct. And if there's more than one possible answer, I find a way to, put them both in there. So I put both the Ben's Mesa thing and Satine in there. That was just between me and it had been suggested to me by my editor, or one of the editors of the process. Where it came from beyond that, or what it meant after that, that is outside my realm. I'm just a guy in Wisconsin.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast this evening. If people are interested in purchasing any of your books or finding more information about you, where is a good place to find you online?
My website, farawaypress.com. I have behind-the-scenes pages on just about everything I've ever done, including an extremely long one on Kenobi. Probably the longest one on the site is for Kenobi. Chapter-by-chapter trivia, behind-the-scenes notes, a link to maps on StarWars.com of everything that happens in the book, and also a link to James Arnold Taylor doing a reading from one of the meditations that Obi-Wan does. James Arnold Taylor being the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Clone Wars, and so you have that, and basically most of those pages have links that go to, I've got a page on the website for each of the books where you've got links for Amazon and all the various other bookstores that are out there. On Twitter, I am JJM Faraway. On Facebook and Instagram, I am John Jackson Miller.
Awesome. Well, definitely thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to talk to us. This was a phenomenal conversation, and we are so thrilled to have you on the show and to share this with our listeners. So thank you so much for all your great work in Star Wars and all the other franchises that you continue to do work in.
Well, thanks, and may the Force live long and prosper.
Exactly. Listeners, thank you for listening to this episode and our discussion with John Jackson Miller. And of course, we want to hear what you thought of our discussion, or if you have any follow-up comments, and you can let us know on all the various social medias. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can tweet at us, and we're on Twitter at SQPN, and you can email us any feedback at starwars@sqpn.com. Also, please join us in the discussion on Discord. We are on Discord at sqpn.com/Discord is how you can find us. And at this point, we of course want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, because we can't do this show without your help. And so this week we are recognizing Renee H., Stephanie Z., Paul L., Kenya S., and George S. And their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows that we make here at StarQuest. And if you would like to join them, go to sqpn.com/give. Also, of course, make sure that you are subscribed to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast, so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on the SQPN YouTube channel. And you can find all of our previous episodes by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And that is going to be it from us today. And of course, we are super excited because we will be back next week as we eagerly jump into our review of the first 2 episodes of the Kenobi show. So definitely don't want to miss that. Watch those episodes and join us next week as we talk about all things Kenobi. So until next week, Angela Stiolana, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Wars.
What a pleasure it's been. Thank you.
And Mike Creevy, thanks for joining us this evening as well.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.